far beyond Mr. Avalos. I also want to thank my staff that traveled with me to Mexico yesterday, to Juarez. I am blessed to have a communications director who is polyglot, a district director who is polyglot. They both speak Spanish fluently. And I have other persons on the staff who are polyglot and speak Spanish as well. I was very fortunate to have the lawyer who represents the Avalos family with us. She is with us today as well. And I'm very proud of the service that she is rendering in helping this family. It means a lot to have capable, competent, and qualified attorneys assisting. And she has truly represented them well. This is, of course, Attorney Siam. And if I mispronounce her name, she'll give the correct enunciation when she speaks. But I want to start with this, if I may. Noah should not be without his father. This baby should not grow up without his father. We arranged this trip. I arranged it so that he could be with his father for Thanksgiving. And his father's birthday is on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. His father will be 28 years old. Noah's birthday is in December. We want him to be there for his child's birthday, for his child's first step, for his child's first day of school. Currently, he has been banned, barred from this country for 10 years. 10 years. All because of something that happened more than 2 decades ago. More than 2 decades ago, because his mother took him to Mexico to have him register his birth, and he was a child at the time, about 7 years of age. Something that happened more than 2 decades ago is haunting him now and will haunt him for the next 10 years unless it is corrected. This type of technicality ought not exist in the law, and we plan to correct the law. But that won't satisfy what we're trying to do to get Mr. Avalos connected to his family, reunited with his family, until we can get these other things done. So in addition to desiring to change the law so that others can benefit from this, and we have a private bill that we filed just for Mr. Avalos to make sure he is properly taken care of, we will also do some other things associated with humanitarian relief. And I won't go into great detail about these. His lawyer will speak to them in just a moment. But the point to be made saliently is this is an injustice. We have a man who spent his life, for the most part, in this country. Excuse me just a moment. I think there's quite a bit of noise on your end, so I'm going to mute you for now, and I'll unmute you later, Yariana. So hold on. We will unmute them at the appropriate time. As I was saying, he has spent all of his adult life in this country. He graduated from Bel Air High School. He has been working in this country. He has not committed any crimes. He is married to an American-born woman. He's married to a woman who misses him and is doing her best to take care of the family in his absence, and I must commend her for what she's doing. And he has an American-born child. For all practical purposes, he is a citizen of this country, except he doesn't have the documentation. And he went back to Mexico to perfect the documentation. What he did was lawful when he left the country to go to meet with the consul in Juarez. But he didn't know, and neither did they at the time he made the appointment, that his mother had taken him back so that he could register his birth, so that the parents could register his birth. He was being adopted, and they were registering his birth. Well, it turns out the law indicates that if you're in the country and you're undocumented, and if you leave, you are now barred, banned from coming back into the country for 10 years. And when he left to come back again after getting his proper visa application perfected, that leaving and returning to Mexico was a part of this absolute ban. I think the best way for you to understand it is to say to you that there is no requirement of showing a willful intent in the law. This law applies similar to the way a speeding law applies. If you're speeding, the officer doesn't have to prove that you were intentionally speeding. If you're going 75 in a 55-mile-per-hour school zone, and that is what has to be proven, that you were going 75 in the 55-mile-per-hour school zone. So we don't get into your intentionality. And that is what has happened with the consul in Juarez, Mexico. I visited with the consul general and had a more than an hour-long visit, perhaps as much as 2 hours. And we went into great detail about this. And the members there were expressing their sorrow for having to follow the law. When I was a judge, there were many times that I had to follow laws that I did not approve of and thought should be changed. They find themselves in this predicament of having to follow the law. And my suspicion is, based upon my conversations with them, that they'd like to see the law changed because they too understand that a baby should not be separated from his father under these circumstances. So we're going to work to change the law. We're going to do all that we can to put this family together permanently and to help him to acquire his proper visa in this country. Finally, before I introduce the lawyer to you and bring her to the microphone, she's been introduced, it's important for us to note that when I was with Mr. Avalos and I saw him interacting with his child, Noah, this baby reaches out to his father. He's at that point now where he's saying, "Da-da." So he's reaching out for his father, and he's saying, "Da-da, da-da." He's starting to talk, and he recognizes his father. It would be a tragedy for him not to grow up with the loving arms of his father to embrace him when he reaches out. We've got to bring this man home. This lawyer has worked tirelessly to this end. I compliment her for putting her duties aside and coming to Mexico with us. I was honored to have her be a part of the trip. We met in my office to have a discussion about this, and she agreed to come. She is making a difference. We're going to ask for humanitarian relief. She is perfecting the request. I will be speaking to Homeland Security about this. I am to meet with Secretary Mayorkas, and this will be an agenda item right at the top of the agenda, the possibility of getting some sort of humanitarian relief, given that the letter of the law seems to be trumping the spirit of the law, because I don't think the spirit of the law intends for this to be the case. Something that happened more than 2 decades ago to a person who has spent a quarter of a century in this country, a quarter of a century, more than a quarter of a century in the United States, and now he's banned from seeing his baby. This is wrong, it is unjust, it is not right, and it must change. And I'd like to have the person who is going to assist in bringing about that change speak to you now. And Attorney, please forgive me for not enunciating your name properly.
Oh, you did well.
I did well.
Is the
All right, thank you.
Salem is the right way to pronounce my name. So I'm Naima Salem, the family's attorney, and thank you, Mr. Green, for those words. And yesterday was a bittersweet day for us. We had the opportunity and the honor of traveling to Juarez with Mr. Green and his staff, with Congressman Green and his staff, to reunite the family. We were able to see them together. I was able to see the emotion in Noah's eyes and Mr. Avalos' eyes. It was very emotional. It was a happy day. It was a happy day because we were able to see them together. But at the end, we know that's not what we intend for them. We want them together in the United States because Mr. Avalos belongs in the United States. He doesn't belong in Juarez. He doesn't belong in Mexico, even though he was born there. That's a country that he doesn't know. So we are focusing all our efforts in bringing him back, at least with the humanitarian parole, until Mr. Again, Congressman Green can change the law. He's doing everything in his power to change the law. We don't understand what the congressional intent was behind this law that keeps people away from their families, even if they have an approved petition by a U.S. citizen spouse. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to do everything in our power to bring him as soon as possible, at least with a humanitarian parole. And Congressman Al Green is helping us with that. And we really appreciate his efforts and his help. And I'm very hopeful that with his help, we are going to achieve our goal, which is to bring him back to his family probably before the end of the year.
Not just yet, please. Not just yet. We're going to hear from Ms. Avalos before we take the questions, if you don't mind, please. But this comment is very important. I talked to him about his life there, and he does not get very far from home. This is not a friendly environment. He really is an outsider. And if you haven't traveled to Juarez, you can't appreciate what I'm saying. Obviously, it's safer than a lot of other places. But when I was able to traverse the city and move around, I had proper security. I had a proper vehicle that was secure. He doesn't have the benefit of these things. And he lives farther away from the consulate than I traversed. So we had lunch together, and he explained to me that when he leaves home, he's usually with a relative, someone that is going to be there to assist him if he needs some type of assistance. So I am concerned about his safety. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm not prognosticating anything, but I am concerned that he's just not at liberty to move freely and to do a lot of the things that are necessary to maintain a decent lifestyle. So we want to bring him home for that reason as well. Now, I'd like to have Ms. Avalos say just a few words about her situation there and what they plan to do, and then we'll hear from Mr. Avalos, and then we'll take your questions. Ms. Avalos, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you're now on, and the press awaits your comments. Would you just give them your brief comments?
Yes, hello. So I'm currently visiting my husband in Ciudad Juarez, and even though we're here for a couple of days, it feels like it's not even enough. We're saddened on the situation, just having to be apart, my baby having to be apart from his father, and just having to get used to our new reality has been really hard and really stressful in our situation, not only financially but emotionally. It's taken a toll on all of us, and I mean, it's a big change for my husband. He's in a country that's foreign to him. Yes, he was born here, but this isn't home to him. Home to him is Houston, Texas. He was raised there, and you know, we just hope that he gets to come back soon.
Thank you. And if Mr. Avalos is there, I'd like for him to say just a brief word as well, please.
Jaime Avalos Rosales. I'm right now in Ciudad Juarez. I've been here for about 3 months, about to make 4 months. I do feel sad that I can't see my family. Unfortunately, I won't see my kid learn new things. I'll miss out on a lot of things. I'm grateful that they're here right now. Just happy to see them, but it's sad that in a couple of days they'll leave, and I probably won't see them anytime soon.
And I will close with this and take your questions. We made this trip. It was what I see as a first and not a last trip. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but we are going to bring Mr. Avalos home. We have to do this. We have to correct this injustice. And with that said, we'll take your questions.
Without the changing of the law, what else can be done?
The humanitarian parole that the lawyer has made reference to is another means by which he can be brought home. This simply says, and I'll have the lawyer give additional commentary because she's the person who's presented this actual request. I'm following up to make sure that the request gets proper consideration. But it simply says this, that he will, because of humanitarian reasons, be allowed to come back into the country. He will be allowed to wait here, And at some point in the future, we are hoping that he can then pursue his pathway to citizenship. Remember, no crimes, 27 years old, been here more than a quarter of a century, taxpayer, buying a home, has a wife, has a baby. Seems to me that the argument speaks for itself. He deserves this opportunity, and we're going to do what we can to make sure it happens. And I'll let the lawyer say more about the humanitarian parole.
The humanitarian parole is a request for the government to let him back in the United States legally. That's the parole request that we're asking, because we don't know how long will it take for the law to change, if it changes. So we need him here, and for that reason we are requesting the humanitarian parole, and we are hoping for that to be approved as soon as possible with the help and support of Congressman Al Green.
En español, ¿nos podrías explicar acerca de esta opción que tienen del perdón humanitario? ¿Ya se está generando? ¿Cuándo se va a enviar al Congreso?
Ya fue enviado el parol humanitario, lo enviamos ya la semana pasada, y le incluimos la propuesta de ley que el congresista Al Green propuso en el Congreso. Entonces eso lo añadimos a nuestro pedido de parol humanitario para darle más fuerza y para que el Congreso entienda, y les explicamos toda la vida del señor Avalos, le explicamos que él pues ha vivido aquí toda su vida, simplemente salió a realizar su adopción sin su conocimiento, sus padres lo llevaron, les explicamos que él se graduó de Bel Air High School, que él ha estado trabajando, que ha pagado impuestos, todas las razones por las cuales él debería estar aquí. Les explicamos que él es un americano como cualquier otro, lo único que él no tiene es ese documento que diga que es un ciudadano americano. Así que eso es lo que estamos haciendo, que el Congreso entienda, que el DHS entienda y que se lo aprueben lo antes posible para que él pueda estar aquí con su familia y ojalá pasar Navidad junto a ellos y ver a Noah, que ya, como dijo el congresista, está empezando a caminar, está empezando a hablar, y es muy triste para Jaime no poder estar presente durante todos estos momentos.
Abogada, ¿cuánto pudiese tardar ese periodo de respuesta? Estamos hablando de que, bueno, en el caso de ser aprobado pudiese ser antes de diciembre, pero ¿esto pudiese tardar más?
Podría tardar más, claro que sí. Nosotros vamos a hacer todo lo posible, y con el apoyo del congresista Al Green yo creo que eso nos lo podrían contestar antes de finales de año. Pero claro, no tenemos un tiempo definido, el gobierno no tiene un tiempo límite para podernos contestar este tipo de pedido.
¿De quién depende específicamente la aprobación de este perdón humanitario?
Del Departamento de Seguridad Nacional, específicamente de UCIS.
¿Tienen esperanzas de que puedan reunir a la familia aquí en Estados Unidos pronto?
Claro que sí, yo tengo todas las esperanzas de que vamos a poder reunir a la familia aquí. El señor Avalos se merece estar aquí, el señor Avalos pertenece a Houston y a Texas, su familia es de aquí, y nosotros estamos haciendo todo lo posible por lograrlo, y yo sé que vamos a ser exitosos.
Una vez que se envió este parol que dice que fue la semana pasada, ¿hay otro paso a seguir o simplemente a la espera de la aprobación?
Bueno, se le tiene que dar seguimiento, como el congresista dijo, él nos va a ayudar a darle seguimiento con el Departamento de Seguridad Nacional, él va a hablar con el secretario Mayorkas para que le den consideración lo antes posible a este requerimiento que nosotros estamos haciendo, este pedido de parol humanitario, para poderlo traer lo antes posible. Aparte de eso, pues no tenemos nada más que hacer y esperar a que se lo aprueben. Si se lo aprueban, le llegaría un paquete a su casa en Juárez, la casa de su tío específicamente, donde él está viviendo, y luego ya él podría entrar a los Estados Unidos.
¿Tendría que acudir al consulado de Ciudad Juárez para que le den un tipo de permiso para poder entrar?
Ese permiso ya le puede llegar directamente a él, a su casa, y con él se presenta al puente o al puerto de entrada y ya podría entrar a los Estados Unidos.
¿Este plan humanitario que ha usado antes ya ha sido suceso?
Sí lo he hecho varias veces antes, y sí hemos tenido éxito en las circunstancias correctas, como en estas situaciones. No es que cualquier persona que tenga el permanent bar, como se le llama en inglés, o el castigo permanente de los 10 años, va a obtener este tipo de parol humanitario, pero en el caso como él, que él es un muchacho que tenía DACA, que ha pagado impuestos, que tiene un récord impecable, ni siquiera una multa de tránsito ha tenido en su vida, y ha estado viviendo aquí por 27 años, yo estoy segura que este es uno de los casos precisos donde el gobierno de los Estados Unidos debe considerar para aprobar este tipo de parol humanitario.
Yo sé que fueron a visitar a la familia. nos puedes describir qué fue lo que hicieron y el tiempo que hicieron, un poco lo que se vivió allá?
Sí, fue un día, pues como les dije anteriormente, bueno, lo dije en inglés me parece, que fue emocionante porque yo pude ver cómo Jaime y Noah, cuando se encontraron, lo único que hacían era mirarse a los ojos. El niño se le salieron las lágrimas, me pareció increíble que tan pequeñito así se pueda emocionar al ver a su papá. Y lo que nosotros queríamos era demostrarle al señor Avalos que nosotros estamos 100% comprometidos con su causa y que lo vamos a traer. Fue un honor para mí poder viajar con el congresista y poder ver a la familia pues reunida. Lo que le queríamos decir era, estamos aquí para ti, no vamos a descansar hasta que tú estés en los Estados Unidos, donde tú perteneces. Y también pues queríamos ver cómo era, hablar con él, cómo era su vida diaria, y él nos pudo explicar pues básicamente lo que dijo el congresista anteriormente. Él no sale de su casa solamente a un colmado que está justo frente a su casa. Aparte de ahí, él no se atreve a salir a ningún otro lado porque él es un extranjero para todos los efectos. Así que si él sale fuera de ir a ese colmado que queda frente a su casa, tiene que salir en compañía de sus familiares. Y pues eso era lo que quería ver más bien el congresista, si él estaba a salvo, si él corría algún peligro por ser básicamente un extranjero o un americano viviendo en Juárez. Así que eso fue lo que hicimos, pues asegurarnos que la familia esté bien y asegurarles a ambos, no solo al señor Avalos, pero también a su esposa, que estamos muy comprometidos con su causa, y creo que se lo pudimos demostrar porque fuimos ayer hasta Juárez a visitarlos y a decirles eso.
No sé si usted puede contestar esto, pero psicológicamente, ¿qué efecto tiene esto en un niño?
Bueno, yo no soy psicóloga, pero pude palpar la necesidad que tiene Noah de estar con su papá. Como les dije, me sorprendió muchísimo que un niño de 1 año se emocionara tanto al ver a su papá y todo el tiempo estaba diciéndole, tratando de hablar con él, tratando de perseguir a su papá, no le dejaba de mirar en todo momento. Así que yo estoy segura que él está desesperado por estar con su papá todos los días. Nos cuenta Jaime que todos los días cuando él llegaba del trabajo, él estaba todo el tiempo hasta que Noah se acostaba a dormir con él, jugando y hablando con él y etcétera. Y eso es algo pues que estoy segura que Noah, ciudadano americano, no debería estar sufriendo por una ley absurda que tenemos.
Parte de la lucha que entiendo que está haciendo
I
el
want you to repeat
congresista.
excuse me a second, repeat the questions in English if you would.
Okay.
And continue to give the answers.
Okay, so the question was if it will have a psychological impact on Noah. And I stated that I'm not a psychologist, but I was able to see firsthand yesterday how Noah was reacting to his dad's being there with him. He was very emotional. He even cried a little bit when he saw his dad. He was very happy to see his dad, so I'm sure that he misses his dad dearly. And Mr. Avalos was explaining to us that every day when he came home after work, he would spend playing and talking to Noah until he went to sleep. So Noah is an American citizen that is suffering for something that it's completely out of his hands, and that shouldn't be happening.
Okay. Can you repeat the question, his last question in Spanish? So that,
La pregunta que iba a hacer básicamente era parte de la lucha que entiendo que está haciendo el congresista para que alguien no viva algo similar en el futuro. ¿Cuáles fueron las fallas, usted como abogada, que existieron aquí en este caso que usted pueda mencionar?
Sí, la propuesta de ley es para eliminar el castigo permanente para jóvenes que estén en la misma situación de Jaime Avalos. La ley lo que dice es que si una persona está aquí indocumentada por 1 año o más, sale del país y regresa, no puede arreglar su residencia permanente, aunque sea pedido por un hijo ciudadano o una esposa ciudadana, a menos que pase 10 años fuera del país. Y por eso es que Jaime Avalos está en esta situación. The question is if what's wrong with the law? What happened? Why is he barred from coming to the U.S. for 10 years? And
okay.
so the answer is the law says that if you've been undocumented here in the U.S. longer than a year and you go outside of the country and you re-enter, you're barred for 10 years. It's called the permanent bar. There's no waiver for it. There's no exceptions. And that's exactly what Congressman Al Green is trying to change.
Thank you. Let me make a couple of additional comments. If you have questions, we'll take more. But it's important to note that I do have a letter that I've sent to the Secretary that we'll share with you. This is a letter that we sent to Secretary Mayorkas on November the 15th. We've also contacted the Judiciary Committee, Ms. Zoe Loughran, about this in terms of legislation that we have filed. We've also have these two bills. This is the Bill 9276. This is the one that will help Mr. Avalos. And we have H.R. 9261. This is the bill that will help others who are similarly situated. These things can be made available to the press. Finally, this, on the question of whether this is creating some mental concerns of any type, with reference to Mr. Avalos, I saw tears well in his eyes, literally. I saw him having to hold back his tears yesterday when he was embracing his child and speaking of the possibility of being separated from his child. It's a very sad thing to see. It's having an impact on the father, and I suspect that it will have an impact, his father not being with him. Every child, if at all possible, should be with his father, and we regret that this is a circumstance that we have to correct, but we will correct it. And I want to thank you for those questions that you are asking. It's important that this story get out to all segments of society, because it's not just about a person who happens to be from Mexico. This is about a human being who happens to have a life that has been disrupted because of an unjust law. And I appreciate what you're doing to help us get it out. Thank you so much. Any other questions before we?
What chances do you think of changing this law? Yeah.
I don't know, because there's a new Congress coming in, and we'll have to see how the new Congress will embrace this. It may take us a moment to get that answer, but we will get an answer because the legislation has been filed. It will be filed again in the new Congress. It's unfortunate that this is all happening right near the end of the current Congress, so we'll have to file it again in the new Congress. But there will be no stone left unturned. And I think that this is evidence of what we plan to do. And as I indicated, I'm very pleased to know that this lawyer is doing an outstanding job in representing this family. And if you do what I hope you will see as a reasonable thing to do, and that is let the public know. They need to know what's happening to people, people who use the term illegals. This is a person. This is a human being. Didn't come here on his own volition. Brought here by his mother, about 1 year old. Been here over a quarter of a century. And now something that happened more than 2 decades ago that he had no control over is preventing him from being with his child. This is a human being. And I'm going to beg that people would stop using this term illegals. It's not a healthy term to use. It isn't. We are dealing with human lives, and we ought to respect human life and not assign such terms to human life. Any other questions?
I have one question from the Houston Chronicle.
Yes.
They're asking, what was the specific law that he broke that has led to this far? And did he have DACA when he left to Mexico for the interview?
He had DACA when he left to go to the interview, yes. And we'll get the specific site on the law for him at an appropriate time. We'll call him back and give him the specific site. And we do have it. But yes, he had DACA at the time. But because he left and he can't return now, he has been divested of his DACA status. And we're going to try to get that reinstated as well. Our intentions are for him to get it reinstated, because if he gets that reinstated, then he can have a job and continue his work life, his normal life, the life that he's lived for more than a quarter of a century in this country. A quarter of a century is a pretty long time. And for something that happened more than 2 decades ago that he had no control over as a baby, to prevent him from having his life with his child and his wife, it makes no sense. It's unjust. It's unfair, and we have to change it.
Cuestiones for the lawyer en español. DACA te protege, pero no te protege el Estado. ¿Me equivoco?
Would you repeat it in English, the question?
If
first, and then-
DACA protects you, but,
It won't protect you if you leave the country, right?
well, no, if you leave the country, you need to ask for an advance parole to be able to come back to the United States. If you leave without the advance parole granted, then you cannot come back to the U.S.
Advanced parole means, if I may just say this, advanced parole means permission. If you leave with permission and you come back, then you're okay. But if you leave without advanced parole permission, then you're going to find yourself in these circumstances that we're in now, which makes no sense, because when he left with a scheduled appointment to meet with the consulate. He didn't leave to go on vacation. He was there for a lawful purpose as he understood it, not knowing about what happened when he was 7 years of age. So yes, he could have left with lawful permission, but he did not, because he didn't know about all of these things. And then there were other things that could have been done too, but we need not go into them at this time. So would you address that in Spanish, please?
Sí, por supuesto. El DACA lo protege mientras él está aquí en los Estados Unidos de deportación, le permite tener permiso de trabajo y les permite viajar fuera de los Estados Unidos. Pero antes de ellos salir del país tienen que pedir lo que se llama un advance parole, para que es solamente un permiso de reentrada a los Estados Unidos. Así que eso era lo que él tenía que haber hecho si él salía y entraba luego legalmente con un paro, pero él no sabía de esa posibilidad. Nunca se le explicó, nunca se le dio el consejo de que hiciera esto, y por eso él se fue a su entrevista por la petición aprobada que ella tenía por parte de su esposa ciudadana americana, y ahí en el consulado se entera que él a los 7 años había estado en México para ser adoptado y ya no podría volver a los Estados Unidos por 10 años.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, let me just thank you for being here. And as I said, I trust that this message will get the attention that I think it merits, and that it will be printed and published in many ways, especially among the people that are of different origins, because this is not just about one person, it's about a group of people. I thank the press for being here, and I assure you, we will correct this injustice. It may take longer than I'd like, but we will correct it. Thank you.
Gracias a todos.
Okay.
If you want to know the INA.